Yo, what's good, YouTube? Issachip _ on Twitch. We got a new visual venture video. The teacher who became the FBI's most wanted criminal. And I got my sushi. Come on.
He was just a real quiet guy. You know, he came to town. He never bothered anybody. He never gave anybody a hard time. He was never in trouble.
The students hated him, absolutely loathed him. Didn't have any class hours. He wouldn't talk to them.
The FBI has linked that single suspect to nearly 24 incidents around the country.
He was a brilliant criminal in that he was able to...
They deep fried this hoe. Oh, this shit hitting.
Expertly exclude anything identifying himself.
Today, the FBI arrested Theodore Kaczynski, the suspected Unabomber.
When Ted Kaczynski was only 25, he became the youngest college professor at UC Berkeley. It should have been the start of a successful career. However, for Ted, it was the first step to becoming one of America's most notorious criminals. This is the surprising story of how a respected teacher ended up on the FBI's most wanted list. I'm Visual Venture, and you are awesome. The Strange Professor. Ted Kaczynski was dangerously smart. By the time he was 10, people were already calling him a genius.
He took an IQ test at that time, and according to his report, scored between 160 and 170 points.
That's the same...
Bro, that's easy, bro. I can do that. 160.
IQ range as Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking. School was a breeze for Ted. By 15, he was done with high school. By 20, he graduated from Harvard. And by 25, he had a PhD and cracked a math problem no one could figure out.
He won an award for his dissertation and because he solved a theorem that had been thought unsolvable for decades by mathematicians.
That's when UC Berkeley gave him a job as an assistant professor. On paper, his life looked perfect. But there was one problem. Ted hated being a teacher. He didn't like the job, he didn't like the students, and he definitely didn't like being around people. Even Ted's own brother noticed something was off. He said Ted didn't seem particularly proud of himself. At the time, no one thought much of it, but looking back, it was an early sign that something bad was coming. By all accounts, Ted was a terrible teacher. Students walked into his class expecting to learn from a genius. Instead, they got a grumpy professor who read straight from the textbook.
The students hated him, absolutely loathed him. Didn't have any class hours. He wouldn't talk to them.
By his second year at Berkeley, Ted stopped trying to fit in. He cut ties with colleagues, and he moved into a cabin miles away from campus. But there was a reason Ted hated his job and wanted to disappear. It wasn't just that he was shy or awkward. There was something bigger eating at him. He hated what technology was doing to the world. In Ted's eyes, technology wasn't making life better. It was ruining everything. And the more he thought about
This nigga would hate AI, bro.
About it, the angrier he got, until one day it pushed Ted to do something unthinkable. So the question was, why did this Einstein-level teacher have a problem with technology? The world is falling apart. Ted believed he was living in what he called an industrial society, a world where the goal was to produce as much as possible as fast as possible. And to do that, society relied heavily on technology. But there's a problem with this scenario. In Ted's eyes, people weren't in control anymore. Society was becoming too dependent on technology, and Ted couldn't stand it.
He viewed technology as evil, as the evolution of technology as evil, and the technical class as perverting the human spirit.
But hating technology wasn't enough. Ted wanted to escape. In 1969, only 2 years after being hired, Ted quit his job as a college professor.
He wasn't able to negotiate the social world with other people. And so he grew convinced that he had to get away from people, away from society.
For a while, Ted moved back in with his parents, but soon he bought a plot of land deep in the woods of Montana. Ted built a tiny cabin there, and he made sure it had no technology.
No electricity, no running water, and just a wood-burning stove for warmth.
It was just Ted alone with nature. For a while, he was at peace. He spent his days foraging for food, reading old books, and riding into town on a bicycle. But in the middle of nowhere, his hatred for technology didn't fade. In 1971, Ted wrote a 23-page essay laying out exactly how he thought technology was ruining the world. He said the more people trusted machines, the less control they had over their own lives. The only way to save the world was to stop the advancement of technology. He mailed the essay to...
One piece left, bro. Y'all see what?
His family. This was the first time Ted shared his dark thoughts openly.
He began to write very hostile, angry, resentful letters to our parents. I had a hard time understanding where the resentment came from.
Y'all see this. Niggas trying to do finance and phrase in real life.
Night, fun time, Freddy. Oh.
What is my
Good night,
purpose?
fun time, Freddy.
Father, can I ask you a question?
Sure, buddy. Just don't get about birds and the bees. You're not ready for that yet, of course.
Yeah, I would break this thing.
This is why you don't drink. You get drunk, you lose your pants, and now you're wearing mine. Why you got my pants?
You see what it asked. I seen what it asked. I seen the video. And he said, what's my purpose?
Fun time, Freddy.
Is my purpose. You never gave me a definitive answer.
I nigga need to be smacked, bro. Until next week, bro. Nigga on some iRobot shit. Let me go put this in the dishwasher.
Then after years of hiding deep in the woods, Ted's quiet life was destroyed. The same technology he hated came crashing into his life, and it finally sent him over the edge. In 1975, developers moved into Montana. They cut down trees, built roads, and put up new houses. The wilderness Ted loved was disappearing.
Planes started flying overhead. He noticed motorcyclists riding through the forest and disturbing the nature that he was glorying in.
One day, Ted hiked to his favorite spot, a rocky ridge by a waterfall, but everything was gone. Bulldozers flattened the ridge, and a road now ran straight through it. Ted described this as the moment he snapped. His exact words were, "You just can't imagine how upset I was." It was from that point on that I decided rather than trying to acquire further wilderness skills, I would work on getting back at the system. Revenge. The revenge begins. Ted wanted to attack the people and places that represented technology. He started small. First, he trashed a vacation home near his cabin. Then he set fire to a bulldozer. After that, he poured sugar into a snowmobile's gas tank. And soon afterward, he smashed some construction equipment. But Ted wasn't satisfied. He wanted to hurt the system.
Chip you a bit. Alright, but
not just machines. That's when he decided to do something absolutely insane. He was going to build bombs and mail them across the country. Ted's first target was Professor Buckley Crist. He was an engineering professor at Northwestern University. In Ted's mind, Buckley represented everything he hated about technology. Ted built a small bomb and hid it inside a package. Then he mailed it to Buckley. On May 25th, 1978, the package showed up at Northwestern University. It had Buckley Crist's name on it, but no real return address. Buckley felt something was off. He called campus security to inspect it. That was a mistake, because as soon as the guard opened the box, it exploded. Luckily, no one lost their life, but both Buckley and the guard walked away with injuries. The police looked into the incident, but they couldn't figure out who sent the bomb or why. In the end, they concluded that it was just a prank, but little did they know it was just the beginning of Ted's campaign of terror. A year later, Ted sent another bomb to the same university. This time, a student opened it and got injured. But Ted's next target was far more extreme, an
My name is Buckley, bro. I'm never opening another package ever in my life.
Airplane. In November 1979, an American Airlines flight took off from Chicago heading toward Washington. But mid-flight, smoke started filling the plane. The passengers were screaming and panicking. Luckily, the pilot was able to make an emergency landing. But when authorities checked the plane, they found something that made their jaws drop. There was a bomb hidden in the cargo hold.
We found that it contained a barometric switch and some other initiating components, batteries, wires, and a container for the explosive charge.
It was designed to detonate when the plane reached a certain height. Luckily for the passengers, the switch malfunctioned. Bombing a plane is a federal offense, so the case was taken over by the FBI. As the agents studied the bomb, they noticed it looked a lot like the ones from Northwestern University.
There were construction techniques, the way the wood was cut, the way it was put together, the markings on the wood, the way the tape was applied.
That's when the FBI realized they were dealing with a serial bomber, a domestic terrorist. They gave him a name, the Unabomber, short for the University and Airline Bomber. Unfortunately for the FBI, they had no fingerprints on the bomb, no witnesses, and no leads. But they did find one strange clue.
The initials FC were put in these to be found, clearly protected in such a way that they would survive the blast.
At first, they thought FC might be a secret code or initials for a radical group. But after months of investigation, they discovered the truth. It meant nothing. Ted placed the initials there to throw investigators off his trail. Meanwhile, his attacks continued. For the next 6 years, Ted did a lot of damage. In 1980, he mailed a bomb to an airline boss in Illinois. In 1981, he sent one to the University of Utah. Then in 1982, he mailed 2 more. One to Vanderbilt University and one to UC Berkeley, where he used to work. Almost every time, people were injured, but no one lost their life. Ted paused the packages for 2 years, but in 1985, he returned with a bang. That year alone, he mailed 3 packages, hurting even more people. Each attack made the news. Soon, ordinary people were scared to open their mail, just in case it contained a bomb. The FBI couldn't calm people down because after years, they still had no real leads.
He was a brilliant criminal in that he was able to expertly exclude anything identifying himself.
So far, no one had lost their life because of the Unabomber. But that was about to change. In December 1985, a wooden box was left outside a computer store in California. When the shop owner went to inspect it, it exploded. Unfortunately, he didn't survive. For the first time, the Unabomber had taken a life, and now the FBI was desperate. Then 2 years later, they finally caught a break. On February 20th, 1987, Ted went to drop off another bomb, this time at a computer store in Salt Lake City. But while he was planning the bomb, the store's secretary spotted him through the window. He was wearing a hoodie and dark sunglasses, trying to hide his face. At the time, she didn't think much of it, but an hour later, the package exploded, injuring the store owner. When the police showed up, the secretary told them about the man she saw. Based on her description, they created this sketch. For the first time, the FBI had an idea of what the Unabomber might look like, and they broadcasted the sketch on practically every TV station in the country.
I did not need that.
Luckily for Ted, the sketch...
This nigga on some Dan Snyder shit with that, bro. I did not need to see all 10 toes just now. God damn, bro.
Wasn't enough to identify him, but Ted knew they were getting closer, and it scared him. A new beginning. For 6 years, the Unabomber went silent. There were no attacks. The FBI started to think he was gone forever. But they were wrong. Ted only stopped because the police sketch rattled him. By 1993, his confidence returned, so he struck again. Ted's new target was Dr. Charles Epstein, a scientist at the University of San Francisco. On June 22nd, 1993, Dr. Epstein received a padded envelope in the mail. When he opened it, the package exploded. Just 2 days later, Ted struck again. This time, the package was addressed to Dr. David Gelernter, a renowned computer scientist at Yale. As soon as Gelernter opened it, it detonated. Both attacks made headlines. Everyone knew the Unabomber was back. In 1994, Ted took it even further. During a 5-month period, he mailed 2 more packages. 2 people lost their lives. But Ted didn't want it to seem like random attacks. He wanted everyone to understand why he was doing this. So he decided to send a message to the entire world. In June 1995, Ted mailed a 35,000-word essay to major newspapers, including the New York Times and the Washington Post. Attached to the essay was a chilling ultimatum: publish my essay and I will stop the bombings.
He wanted them to consider publishing that essay, and if they did, he would make an agreement to cease committing acts.
It wasn't an easy decision. On one hand, the newspapers didn't want to publish and spread the Unabomber's ideology, but if they refused, more lives could be at risk. So on September 19th, 1995, the Washington Post published Ted's essay. They called it the Unabomber Manifesto, but the official title was Industrial Society and Its Future.
It was all there today, all 35,000 words of the Unabomber's message to America.
In the essay, Ted explained why he thought technology was destroying the world. He said society was so dependent on technology that humans were mere cogs in the social machine. He even warned that one day technology would alter human DNA.
His purpose was to wake people up to the dangers of technology.
At the end of his essay, Ted called for a revolution. He wanted society to rise up and destroy technology. In his mind, he wasn't a terrorist. He was saving the world. The essay sparked debate. Some thought he was a genius. Others dismissed it as nonsense. But for the FBI, it was a potential breakthrough. Millions of Americans were reading the manifesto, and the FBI hoped someone would finally recognize the Unabomber's ideas or writing style.
It was recognizable. Somebody in reading this, we hoped, would read it and say, I remember that guy. He was sat next to me in class.
And that's exactly what happened. One person recognized the writing style immediately. It was Ted's younger brother, David. Can't hide from a family. When David first read the Unabomber manifesto, it reminded him of Ted's old letters. David mentioned it to his wife, and together they began pouring through Ted's old letters, searching for similarities. In one letter, Ted called himself a cool-headed logician. That exact phrase showed up in paragraph 18 of the Unabomber manifesto, and there were even more similarities.
There were phrases that appeared in the manifesto that were unusual, spellings that appeared that were unusual, and David recognized him.
In one paragraph, the Unabomber referred to the popular saying, "You can't have your cake and eat it too," but the wording was off. Ted wrote, "You can't eat your cake and have it too." When David checked Ted's letter, he saw the exact same line, "You can't eat your cake and have it too." Still, David was in denial, until he found one final piece of evidence. David found an essay Ted sent him in 1971. It had the same tone, the same ideas, and even the same phrases as the manifesto. At that moment, David knew his brother was the Unabomber. In February 1996, David made the hardest decision of his life. He decided to turn his brother in. David gave the
This nigga would have never been caught, bro.
FBI Ted's 1971 essay. Linguistic experts compared it to the manifesto and found over 160 matching phrases and patterns.
It was very clear to us, many of us in the task force, that the similarities were more than coincidental.
Finally, 17 years after the first bombing, the FBI had a real suspect. On April 3rd, 1996, the FBI made their move. At 5 a.m., agents set up command posts near Ted's remote cabin. Two agents disguised as forest officers knocked on Ted's door. They pretended to ask for directions. As soon as Ted turned his back, they grabbed him.
He looked just absolutely disheveled. He looked like he was covered with soot. The agents that had grabbed his arms to restrain him had soot on their hands.
With Ted in handcuffs, the FBI turned their attention to his cabin. Inside, they found a live bomb ready to be nailed, handwritten notes about his attacks, the hooded sweatshirt and sunglasses from the police sketch, and the manual typewriter used to type the Unabomber manifesto. The case was closed. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was finally caught. But for the people of Lincoln, Montana, it didn't make sense. They've known Ted for years. He was their gentle, harmless neighbor.
He was just a real quiet guy. You know, he came to town. He never bothered anybody. He never gave anybody a hard time. He was never in trouble.
Catching the Unabomber was one of the longest, most expensive manhunts in FBI history. So what would happen to Ted when he got in front of a judge? The trial. In April 1996, Ted appeared before a federal grand jury. He was charged with 10 counts of illegally mailing and using bombs, as well as other crimes. The evidence against him was overwhelming, but all hope wasn't lost for him. Ted's lawyer had a plan. They wanted to argue that he was insane so he would escape the death penalty, but Ted refused. He believed calling him insane would make everything he did meaningless. It would destroy his message, so he fought back. First, he tried to fire his attorneys. Then he tried to end his own life, but the guards stopped them in time. After the attempt, Ted was sent for psychological evaluation. After 6 days of analysis, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But Ted rejected that diagnosis. He refused to be labeled insane. He wanted to stand trial as a sane man, no matter the consequences. On January 22nd, 1998, Ted pled guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences. After his conviction, the US government seized his his cabin. The contents of his cabin were auctioned for $232,000. That money went to help his victims. Ted was sent to a supermax prison in Colorado, locked in a concrete cell for 23 hours a day. But even when he was behind bars, people didn't forget the Unabomber. Ted received hundreds of letters from people who agreed with his warped philosophy. For years, the world heard little about Ted. Then in 2021, news broke. Ted had cancer, and on June 10th, 2023, he was found lifeless in his cell. Ted Kaczynski had a brilliant mind, but his intelligence will never become a substitute for morals and values. An intelligence without empathy can become destruction. Visual Venture.
Nah, good vids.
If you guys like this video,
shout out Visual Venture, bro. He be making these. I told you, bro. He making hits every week, bro. And he hit 1 million subs, bro. Man, shout out gang, bro. Shout out gang, bro. I've been here since before 1 million.
It's a YSL. It's a PDE. That's my old team. It's a TBT.